Okay, good evening, everyone. Please raise your hand if you can all hear me talking. Some parts of this evening we'll want a discussion, so that'll be good. Okay, it looks like everybody can hear. Hi, Dottie. I'm glad you got in because I wasn't sure whether you got the invitations or not. So it's good to see you here. Hi there. And I've spoken to Anthony tonight. Welcome to Michelle as well. I saw Michelle and Lance. So let's get on this evening. This will be the first part. We're doing two parts for the unit for 501, which is the integrative processes. But the first part of this is really an introduction into project management. And I did try an experiment a little bit earlier on. I'll try another one later on this evening by doing breakouts. It looks like most of you have microphones. So there is a part I'd like to put into a breakout room, and then if you can just discuss those, we'll get together again, and then we'll see if we can come up with a conclusion. I just want to try this out. I think it'll be good for our seminars to do it, so I'm not sure exactly how it'll work out, but we'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes on it. So later on this evening, let's just see if that actually works. So let's get on this evening. Oh, I have pulled up the wrong one. Let me just get the right one. I'm terribly sorry about that. Let me just get back onto this one. Documents. That's the one I actually want. Should have checked that one out. Okay, I'm terribly sorry. Welcome, Warren. Hope you can hear. Alright, there we are. So that I've done my housekeeping. Let's get on to it. Let's do some quantum leap thinking. In project management, we need to sometimes think out of the box. The whole idea of project management to me is about constraining everything and putting it into timelines and work breakdown structures and everything, and we manage those things just like we manage a tub of bath water. We put in a plug and we control that by keeping the water in, and we turn on the hot and cold tap depending on how we like our bath. And that's how we actually control the process of filling a tub of bath water. Now, we do the same thing with any kind of process, and with quantum leap thinking and things like that, what we're really trying to do is think outside of the box. So although project management is about doing that, it is also about thinking outside the box. So let's just think of those. Hi, Carlos, welcome. And here we go. Warren here. Okay, Warren doesn't have a microphone tonight. Warren, I'll try and keep you things. Please just ask your question at any time. Just put your chat in there and I'll try and answer it. I'll try and keep watch and make sure that the chat is there. Let's go on to our next one, this quantum leap thinking. And what we're trying to think about here is that projects are always an intervention. So there's always a change in them. So if you think the way you have always thought and do what you have always done, you get the results you've always gotten. Now that's what we are thinking. Alright, so let's think of some things. Whenever we are as project managers, we need to try and think outside of the box of these things. And let's start by this one. Alright, I'd like to ask you, how many F's are in this sentence? Come on, put in the chat there how many you think they are. How many F's in this sentence? Six from Lance. Anybody else? Come on. How many F's in this sentence? Oh, only one person prepared to take it. Michelle? 6, yeah. Anthony, 3. Carlos, you missed one. Yep, we normally see the F's on the first side of the sentence, don't we? So we say finished, we see it. Files, we can see it. And but we really see the next ones, don't we? They're the first ones. And those are the ones we normally see. What we don't normally see are the other ones. So Yep, we have six F's in that sentence. And what we're trying to do here is look for those things that we often just skip over. And as project managers, when we're trying to think of these, we need to watch out that we don't skip over the things that are obvious and some of those things that are not so obvious. I can remember in South Africa, an airline started, and they called it, it had a star and a 5-star, I think it was called, and they only put 3 of the points of the star in there because they said everybody else will see the other 2 points. So if you put 3 points on this tail, the other one, your mind automatically makes up the other 2. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes when we see the F's, we don't see all of the F's. So when we're looking at project management, when we're looking at work breakdown studies, when we're looking at that, we really need to look at the ability to see the things that are either obvious or not so obvious. So that's what we think when we think of quantum leap thinking. Now, we could have taken a few more of that, but I'm not going to. We'll do a few of those things every time we get together on a webinar. So if anybody's got a good one like that, please let us know, and I'll put it up here. Now, what we want to look at is the integrated approach. What I'm talking about the integrated approach here is not the part of the integrated processes that we're talking about. Here's the integrated approach between the diploma of project management and preparing you for the PMP exam or the PMI test that would actually give you certification as a PMI project manager. So that's what I'm talking about in the integrated, and I need to do that because the whole diploma is actually based upon the PMBOK body of knowledge. There are other methodologies. You might have heard of Prince 2, which really has 8 processes. It's a process-oriented methodology, but the diploma of project management is really based upon the PMP. So if we do this PMP, we should be ready, and we should be ready for that for the PMI exam. Right, the project management that we are doing and the PM and the is based on the 3rd edition, and there is another edition out, but the diploma has not really been updated yet to take the later one into consideration. So, and that will still need to be aligned. Here are the 9 project areas, which you'll see coincides exactly to the 9 units of competency that we have in the diploma. There's an additional one here, Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. That is another area that we'll actually take if you do the accreditation, the PMI accreditation. They'll also ask you questions on that. We'll talk a little bit about the questions, the commencement questions, because that has a lot to do with some of the questions you're going to get asked in the if you did the certification. Now, let's just look at what we're doing in this course delivery and how we're going to look at it. We have some theory sessions. We have online self-paced sessions. We have online facilitated training like we do now on the webinars. Unfortunately, these webinars are very short, so I'm going to have to pick and choose topics, and I really have made a guess on the first ones, but like I said to you last week, please send the areas that you want to know, and I will include them into the seminar. So please do that. On the webinars, in the practical sessions, if you would like, I don't mind if we have, and if you want to syndicate within a group of 3 or 4 of you to produce your activities, that'll be great. We can schedule some special times together where we can actually have discussions as well if you want to syndicate with one another. And we can do some practical exercises that way as well. The Q&A question time will also be a time that we can actually get together and actually do that. But we can, if you want to do it as a small groups of 3 or 4 people together and syndicate to do this the diploma, you're welcome, and we can also schedule times with that small group specifically on preparing for your assessments. I will also schedule individual meetings as well if you need that. So please, we will do that. Okay, that's how we're going to look at the course content from an assessment perspective. From a theory point, you're going to start with the multiple choice question. I really want you to go through those areas. I just looked on it a few minutes ago. Nobody's really completed this whole test yet. And there might be a few errors on it. So if you go on it, I will be trying to check it out. I will have to check it out early tomorrow morning. But I'd really like to see if anybody can go right through some of the multiple choice questions. Please don't worry about the score that you're going to get at this stage. This is a pre-test. It's part of the formative assessment. I'm not going to look at the results from a final assessment perspective. In fact, I'm not even going to look much with a quiz at all from the final assessment. Where it's really going to help you is in your own learning. So you should be able to take those tests as many times as you want to. And what we're going to use it for as well is obviously the higher you get, the closer you're getting towards being able to complete the certification, the PMI certification. So that's that one. Then the theory, the questions, on each of the assessments, you'll see there are some project questions from scenarios to test your underpinning knowledge. We might do a few role plays during net meetings to test some of your underpinning skills. And then there's a practical to complete the templates and transfer the knowledge in a simulated work environment. Okay, so you will have templates to complete with every one of these assessments. Okay, well, then I'd really want you to upload the assessments under each project. That will actually help me if you do it online, because I can get a turnaround time quickly, and we can actually make sure that you get that I can get the results to you as quickly as possible. So if you do it online, I obviously can get results to you very, very quickly. Right, now let's just look at the PM Book guide. You may need this guide if you're going to do the PMI certification. We're not using it. We're using the other one, the blue book, the project management, which you should have received. If you haven't received it, please just email me and let me know. But we're going to be using project management principles, processes, and practices. It lends itself very, very well to the diploma course. It's been written for that, and it's one of the better textbooks that we could find, and we'll be using that one a lot as well. So please, that's the actual textbook, but I really don't mind using the project body of knowledge as well. If you can get it out of the library or you want to use it, that's great. It'll actually help you a lot. The primary purpose of the one is to identify the subset of management of body of knowledge that is generally recognized as good practice. So that's what that guide is really. It's what is generally seen as good practice in project management. So that's how the PMI actually see it. And that leads me to the introduction to project management. Are there any questions at this stage before I go on to my next session? Lance has still got his hand up, so Anthony has just raised his hand. Yes, Anthony.
Just to clarify, you're talking about doing the diploma, and then you're talking about certification. Can you just explain the difference between the two, please?
Yes. There is an institute, the Project Management Institute, which is an international organization. The diploma was based upon the Project Management Institute actually put together a body of knowledge. That's what they're known as PMBOK. It is a methodology, if you like, and you can get certified as an accredited project manager through the PMI. Now, the PMI is very similar to AIM, the Australian Institute of Management, or one of the other ones. So the type of accreditation that you're getting there is to say, hey, the person that has CI is accredited as a project manager, and it's international. You shouldn't worry about it too much, because the Diploma of Management is based exactly upon the same one, and here there is a nationally accredited certificate, so or a diploma, so there shouldn't be a problem um, in accreditation. But there are some slight differences in what they're doing. So the one is an international accreditation towards a body, and you become an accredited project manager. The other one is a qualification, which is nationally recognized. So those are the two different things. And what we're saying is that the diploma of project management was based upon the body of knowledge, the PMBOK, so the project management body of knowledge. It was based upon that. So you'll see that there are 9 units of competence, and that is the PMI's 9 areas broken down, areas of knowledge that they actually have. And what we're doing with the integrative processes tonight is actually showing the difference between those. I don't want you to get mixed up with the 9 areas of knowledge and the project process, which we will actually go into next week. Does that clarify, Anthony? Good. All right. Then let's go on to introduction to project management. And I'm really not sure why we have these ones, the daydreams of cat herders. Doesn't mean much. But what we do have are some ancient projects. Now, if we look at these ancient projects, what do they have in common? Well, every one of them had a start and every one had a finish, didn't they? At one stage they started the pyramids, and sometime or other they got finished. The project to go to the moon is that they went to the moon and they certainly came back, so they did get finished. So Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest, and some other climbers climbed the Matterhorn, and many of them, so that could be counted as a project. So the one identifying factor in projects is that it has a start and an end. So what is a project? What are projects? Well, here's a definition for you. A project is a collection of linked activities that's carried out in an organized manner with a clearly defined starting and an end point. That's how most people would define a project. It has a starting point and it has an end point. A project always is not something that is a continuous or an operational thing that goes continuously on. Now, there are some bad projects that have a starting point, and the poor project manager ends up operationally continuing on that project for the rest of his life. That means that he's carried the monkey and didn't end off his project at some stage or other. Now, those have happened before. And that's because the defined specific results weren't defined and said, hey, these are the results we wanted out of the project. They've just continued to put it back into the operations of the organization. So, but a good project has a start and an end point. So what is a project? This is the PMBOK version of it. A project is a temporary endeavor to create a unique product, service, or result. That's it. It's a temporary endeavor to create a unique product, service, or result. That's how they would have done it. So are there differences between a project and an operational work? Well, there are some shared characteristics. For a start, both projects and operational works all are performed by people. They're constrained by the same limited resources. They're all planned and executed and controlled. So what's the difference with a project? Well, a project has a unique purpose. An operational plan sure has a purpose, and that is to achieve the goals of the organization or the aim of the organization, but a project has a unique purpose within that environment. Another one is a project is always temporary. A project cannot be permanently in place. The resources normally come from all over the organization. We're going to talk about some types of organizations tonight, and I think we're going to have a little bit of discussion on that one because we did on the previous one as well. And we'll ask some of the questions that I asked earlier, and it'll be very interesting to see how you answer them tonight. So we're going to look at some organizations a little bit later on and what happens to these resources that come from various areas. The other thing that a project has, it always has a primary sponsor. Now, a primary sponsor and a client are often the same thing, but not necessarily. And I try to explain that is that I worked for an authority when I was not so long ago. It was the South African Qualifications Authority, and the sponsor was different to the client. Now let's just spend a little bit of time on this so we understand that. Let me give you an example of the SACWA example of a project where the sponsor was different. The sponsor was the European Union. In other words, they gave the money to do a particular project or a set of projects. But the client was the executive officer of the South African Qualifications Authority. So, who determined what was done and what requirements had to be done and what the local projects were was the client. But the sponsor is a major stakeholder, and we're going to talk about stakeholders tonight. A sponsor is a major stakeholder in this. The sponsor wants to know that that the money was wisely spent. The sponsor wants to know that there's a return on investment. But it's the client that determines what has to be done. So those two stakeholders are the most important people within it. It's much easier if the sponsor and the client are the same person. But that's not always the case. So, the final one of what a project is that it always involves uncertainty. So we can plan as much as we like, we can put our risk plans also in place, but we really don't know what the end result is going to be until we actually get there. So in the forward planning of something like this, we really don't know what it's going to be. So there's always involves some sort of uncertainty. Now, here's an exercise. And this is the exercise that I said I'm going to try with a breakout. What I'd like you to do, and I'm going to give you a minute or two to go through that. It might help you to write these down quickly. Okay, creating a new policy. Is that a project or an operation? Don't answer me right now. What I want you to do, I'm going to give you a chance. We're going to try a breakout right now, and then you can come back and tell me which ones you believe these are. The second one is responding to a tender or a proposal. The third one is an ongoing batch production of a specific metal fabrication batch process. Putting up a mobile cellular towers, running a fortnightly salary payment process, getting human resources out of it to a rig, creating a recruitment process, and revamping a recruitment process. Now, I'd like you to tell me which of these, and I'm going to put you into groups. I'm going to send you away, and then I want you to come back and tell me which of these are projects and which of them are operations. Now, I'm going to try this. Okay, I'm going to create breakouts, and I'm going to say evenly distribute. Okay, and now I'm going to say begin the breakouts. Now, what's going to happen is that Anthony and Carlos, you're going to be in one breakout, so you two will be able to discuss with each other which are projects and which are operations. Dodie and Michelle, if you can speak to each other, and then there's Lance and Warren. Now, Lance and Warren, what you're going to have to do is probably use the chat. All right, let's see if this works. I'm going to take a few minutes, and we'll see if this actually works. So please tell me what are operations and what are projects. Here we go. No, it looks like nobody can hear me at the
Okay,
moment.
now I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me now. Good. Now I see yeses,
Yeah.
so it looks like I'm back again. Well, we won't try that breakout too often. It doesn't look like it works too well. So thank you for bearing with me. I'll have to see why it doesn't work too well, but it's a great idea. But it looks like it does cause a problem. So until we're better with it, I think, yeah. All right. So who can, if you put up in the chat, which ones you think are operations? Put up on the chat the numbers of which ones you think would be operations. The greens. Policy, bitch. No. I don't think so, Dirty. I don't think so. Ongoing production of a specific. Anthony, 3 and 5. Lance, 1, 5 and 3. 1, 5 and 3. 5 and 3. 8. Okay. 5 and 3, Carlos. 5 and 3. Well, how many would you say there are there? Which ones would you say has a start and a beginning? Creating a new policy. Yeah, I could see that one. Warren's just put up 1, 6, and 8. Getting resources out to a rig would certainly be. Revamping a recruitment process. It could have. Creating a recruitment process is probably a better project if there was one for that. Ongoing is the clue. Yes. How many of these don't have an end? And this is the biggest clue of all. Which one of these are ongoing? Ongoing is the clue, and I agree with Carlos. He says the ongoing is the clue here. Anthony, 3, 5, and 8. 3 ongoing batch. No, I would still, Anthony. I still think 3, 5, and 8 are all operational. So I would go along, Anthony. If you're saying that those are the operational and they're ongoing, I agree with you. Those are all operation. 3, 5, and 8. So would you agree with me if we say that those were operational? Yep, I think so. And then the rest would be projects. Rest of projects. Okay, so what we're looking at when we look at this, let's see if I can do this now. Whoops. Let me just bring up the whiteboard for a minute. Let me just stop sharing out for a sec. Let me just bring up the whiteboard for a minute. And let me just bring these things here. Let's take that this was the business continuum. Alright, so on this end over here, we have the business continuum. So this is the business process, the normal business process. And it's always ongoing. Right. Alright, that'll be the normal business process. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put a little pigtail in here. Alright. Okay, I'm going to make a circle so that I can actually draw properly around it. And so now if we took a pencil, and let's see if I can make a different color here. It's red. Now, let's say in the normal business process, we wanted to change something. And we had an initiation. So somebody came up with a good idea, and over here we made a change. Okay? And we initiate the project. So this part from here would be the project initiation. This part here would be the project initiation. Okay? It's still in the business process. We're going to try and see whether this is going to do something for us. Then we say, at this point, well, we want to do something that's outside of the business process. So we're going to take it outside of the business process, and we're going to execute the project and implement it, and then we're going to put it back into the process. And this would be, from there then, there would be the finalization. And this would be the project planning, the controlling, and the executing of the project. But what we're actually saying with the project is that it is something in the business that is outside of the business continuum. Alright, so I hope that explains it to some extent. Now let's go back to the... I hope I can get there quite quickly. I've just got a feeling it's going to go back to the beginning. Now I'm not sure how to get it back. Oh, there it did go back. Alright. Why do projects fail? If we have a look on here, projects fail because not all the key people are brought into it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. We're going to look at stakeholders and who the stakeholders are, and leaving primary stakeholders out of the problem can actually kill your project. The second one that kills projects is not being able to meet specifications. Right? That's more of a content, and it's not bringing in the right people to do your defining of your project. Then not focusing on the objectives. Not tracking on agreed changes and writing. Changing the project scope. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. Key personnel leaving. Getting upset. Key personnel getting upset and quitting the project. The key customer contact changes. In other words, the person that you're doing this for changes. All of a sudden you don't have a project anymore because the next person doesn't want this project. And then not managing contingencies as they arise, and poor time management. Now those are the top issues that have caused project failure. These are the top issues that cause project failure. Carlos has just said projects become operations. I agree with him 100%. I can name at least 3 of them where I know that projects became operations and caused a problem. Yes, I will agree with Carlos on that one. So, and that's because they didn't take it out of the business process. But we're going to talk about that now when we come across the different types of organizations. The biggest killer, however, the most common of all problems, is scope creep. Scope creep is the biggest killer of all projects. That's not defining the scope and being able to stick to the scope. It has been the killer of most projects. And you can't rewind it. Once it starts, you can't rewind it and start again. Alright, so let's go to what is project management. Now, the areas of project management, this is from the project management body of knowledge. And there are 6 areas that are important for a project team. The project manager himself doesn't have to have all of these skills and knowledge, but it certainly helps, and you need to make sure that your project team does have this. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about project team next week. What a project team is, who is the project team, and who are stakeholders, and how do they relate to one another. I've got a diagram today, but it is so critical for a project manager to identify his team and to make sure that they understand and that the organization actually understands that project team. But together they must at least have the project management methodology. They must understand the project methodology that they're actually going to use. Now for this course we're going to use the PMBOK methodology, but there are other ones. There's Prince 2, just to name another one. Right? But they must understand the methodology. That project team needs to understand the methodology. They need to understand any of the acts and standards that regulate the organization or the context or environment that they're in. So if you're working in Queensland, you need to know the regulations for Queensland, that in New South Wales, and the Acts of Parliament and that they're actually working, because that can actually pull a project apart. The other one is knowing the project environment. Now, when I say knowing the project environment, we're talking about the organization. It's critical that the project team actually understand the project environment incredibly well. As a team, you need to put together that knowledge that they actually understand that. Then it's the industry that they're in. So if you're in the construction industry, you need to have on your team subject matter experts that are in that team. So if you're in the construction industry, you need to have engineers on your team. If you're in the IT industry, then you better have people that understand IT on your team. There are, of course, general management practices that are important, and obviously the interpersonal and communications. Are there any questions on that one at the moment? All right, let me go on to this one. The next one is, who is the project manager? The project manager is the person responsible for accomplishing the objectives of the project. Now, we're going to look at some of these problems when it comes to different types of organizations. But the project manager is the person responsible for achieving the project objectives. All right. If project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques and project activities in order to meet and exceed the stakeholders' needs and expectations of the project, then it is the project manager who needs to negotiate the project objectives and to ensure that the stakeholder and the project team understand what those project objectives are. It is critical if you don't want to become a failure. So that negotiation process of the scope and those objectives are critical for understanding and delivering the project. So what is different about project management from all other forms of work? Well, project manager differs from other forms of work in the organization and is increasingly being used by organizations because it provides ways to keep pace for ever-changing environment. If you want to be able to do something and change it, it's always good in your business continuity to actually define what you want to do, take it out of there and put it back. I gave an example of that one, and I can always remember because I was somewhat involved in sort of, not directly, but somewhat involved in when I was in South Africa with the E45 project. Now, the E45 project was the redesign of the BMW 3 Series. And they used South Africa because it was out of the way and nobody could see what it was about. And they had a perfect factory place, or a factory to actually design the 3 Series and design the setups and the layouts. They could actually experiment with the processes. They could experiment with the motor vehicle. They could test the designs of it. And they could take it outside of a normal environment. That's exactly what they did. Okay, so BMW go to a way out place like South Africa. They test it in their factory there. They test all the processes for manufacturing the motor vehicle, and then they put it back into their business process. Now that project was so successful because they took it out of the environment, put it back, that they actually ended up putting that factory into their operations, and that factory then built all the 3 Series motor cars that had right-hand drives for around the world. So if you've got a 3 Series motor car, well, I think they've changed the shape again, and they've redesigned the 3 Series again, but certainly up until about 2 years ago, South Africa was producing all the 3 Series motor vehicles, right-hand drive motor vehicles. Now that was because that was a successful project. And that was being able to take it out, being able to change it quickly, and being able to put it back into the business process. Okay, continuously improve their process and products. It's always good to be able to take a smaller project, take it out, do it, and put it back into the process. That's what we're talking about here. It's a good way of testing out new ways of doing things without having a big impact on your normal operations. It gives us the ability to deliver services and products that are tailored to the needs of the customer. Now, I did at one stage in my life work for a company that actually only worked with projects. It was a projectized company. Right? They actually did a lot of work for other, obviously for other companies. They actually were an outsourcing company. So what they would do is they would actually find projects, actually do them, resource them completely, and then put it back into the business. So I worked for a company that actually did that, and it was very easy to actually work with them. Although you didn't have permanent position, only the project managers had real things. Most of the other people were on a project basis. So it did have its own risks, but it's interesting to see how that you can actually have a company that's based purely on projects. The other one is to use different skills of individuals within teams of an environment. It is great for getting multidisciplinary people together to change processes within an organization. So projects are ideal for putting multidisciplinary teams together. A project will not use the same process necessary as the operations. You can actually redesign the work breakdown structure and the process of doing something that's completely different to any of the other ways that are already happening in an organization. So it's a very good way to actually do something new and out of the box. Now, how does project management relate to other management disciplines? Well, according to the project management, to the PMBOK knowledge of management and practices, this is how they see it. They would see need a pointer. They would see the general practices of knowledge and knowledge and things. That's what you would normally find in a business, the general management practices. And that you will see actually intersects here with the PMBOK. In other words, with the project management knowledge and practices. It does intersect with that. So there are general management principles. The other area would be the application area of knowledge and practice. So that would be, for example, construction, civil construction, mechanical construction, factory areas. And that would also intersect with the general accepted project management knowledge. But this, in essence, has become a management science of its own. So project management has become a management science on its own and has integrated this way. And this is what the PMI, the Project Management Institute, have tried to institute. So they have generally provided for getting a body of knowledge of best practice in starting and ending operations, if you like, temporary operations, and have developed a science of their own. Okay, let's go on. Now, what we want to do here is actually talk about the challenges of different types of organizations. Now, you'll see that I have put up here a functional organization, a weak matrix, and a balanced matrix, and a strong matrix, and a projectized organization. Now, let me ask a question, and let's see. How many of you would believe they work in a functional organization? If you could raise your hands, please, I would really appreciate it. What I'm trying to see here is how many of you work in a functional organization. Now, a functional organization would be an organization that has a hierarchy, okay, or a pyramid shape. Okay, so far I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's the majority, and Carlos as well. So what we're saying is that everybody here tonight works in a functional organization. Now these are if you're going to run projects in these organizations, these are the challenges that you're actually going to have as a project manager. Now the first project one is that you're going to find that all decisions need to be cleared with the functional managers. All the decisions are going to be needed cleared by the functional managers. Now, as we go through some of these things later on, we're going to actually talk about how we get over these problems that we're going to come up against. The second problem that you're going to have if you're working in a functional organization, you're trying to implement project management, is that project managements become assistants to the functional managers in getting things done. What does that mean? The only kind of role that you play with these functional managers is the role of a consultant. And you get drowned out by administration. And functional managers are going to put a lot of administration onto you. Alright? And the other thing is they're not going to allow you to have a full-time job. So, in a functional organization, it's actually very difficult to make projects succeed. So, as we go through this course, we're going to look at these three major risks of working with projects in a functional organization. It's going to come up again and again and again. Oh, some of you are starting to agree with me. Hey? Yeah, well, I've worked in a functional organization myself, and I've had to implement projects in a functional organization. And there are some tricks and treats that we can actually look at to get over these ones. That's quite right, Carlos. Functional organizations are based on normal operations. So how do we make projects work in functional organizations? Everybody wants a project. They want projects to implement things. One of the biggest projects I did was we were told by the University Council that we had to implement a new administrative system. And in doing that, we had to change the operations of just about every unit in that organization. And they wanted a project for it. So there are some challenges in doing a work in a functional organization, especially if they want projects run in that organization. Strange enough that most educational institutions are very functional, and yet they talk about research projects all the time. We'll talk about how you can get around those ones. A weak matrix is the next one we're going to talk about. And here are some of the challenges. You think you've got around with a project management with a weak matrix, but PMs only have some authority. They're not usually in charge of the resources of the project. Major decisions still need to be made with the functional manager's cooperation and approval. And believe it or not, the expediters can work in a weak, project expediters can work in a weak matrix organization. They can. It's actually, there are some things that we can actually do. So we'll look at some of those issues as we go through the different areas of the process. We'll actually look at it again next week as well. And all the way through, we're going to look at these 5 types of organizations. A balanced matrix is actually one where a project office has been put into place. And what happens is that project managers often share the authority with functional managers. Now that's what we actually did when we had to do that. And I can show you how you can turn a functional organization even into a battery, especially if you're going to make such a big change as to change every single process in the organization. Then for a while you may become a balanced matrix. And how do you do that? Well, I can show you some tips to actually do that as well. Alright, so that's what we can look at. So a balanced organization might only be temporary in an organization. In fact, at the organization that I was in, we actually had a balanced matrix for about 2 years, and then it went back to a functional organization. So that is a way to be actually to do it. The other one with a strong matrix is normally before we get to there, let's just look at those other risks that we actually have. Okay, a strong matrix is one that's normally had a project management office implemented in the organization. And the project management office really becomes the essential part of it. The project management office normally has a very senior person running it, and they run all the projects as programs, and they have direct input into the most senior, into the executive management of the organization. The project managers actually have a lot of authority, but the team still reports to 2 managers. So there's the issue. How do you report to 2? And what are the problems that you have reporting to 2 managers? The other thing is the team might be judged based on the performance of their projects as well as their functional expertise. What happens in a strong matrix is that the delivery of the project is more important than the functional one. And that becomes a problem. Now, I did say also that I did work in a projectized environment, and there was never a solid organization. The organization did not have a permanent team anywhere. There was no such thing as a permanent team in this organization. The teams are organized around projects. They actually start and they end with those projects. There were core people that obviously got into projects, and they often did that, but the only core people in the organization, the only permanent people in the organization were in fact the project managers. But mostly they did a lot of outsourcing. And the other one is that the project managers make all the decisions about it, including the budgets and the schedule and the quality and the resources. So in a projectized one, they're actually the most important people in the organization. The one that I worked for, they were the only permanent people. And they actually put a proposal to the board. They said, we're going for this. It was normally an outsourced one, and normally was implementing something outside of the only organization. That was a projectized one. There are not, I don't know of too many organizations like this. So, those are the type of organizations that we have. And we're about an hour, so we have a little bit of time left. And I have a question to ask you on these ones now. I'm going to stop sharing this one, and I'm going to open up another document, and then I have a question to ask you. From what we've said tonight, and from what we do, I've got this question to ask. It's very important for project managers to get in their mind that they manage processes and they lead people. So the question that I have for you is this: do project managers manage, and is there a conflict between managing and leading? Is there a conflict between managing and leading? In the next few minutes, can anybody give me an answer on that one? Is there a conflict between being a project manager and being a project leader? Michelle, do you have a microphone? Oh, Michelle, can you talk?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Michelle. All right, Michelle, tell us why you think there's no difference between managing and leading.
I think you can do both. I think by leading you get better results, but you can manage by leading.
Alright, so what do you think the difference is between managing and leading?
Managing is telling, leading is directing and encouraging.
I'm going to draw something up here quickly. Let's see if I can draw this. And if you'll agree with me on this one. Because Lance has said it's going to depend on the style of management. It's going to depend on the style of management. So let's put this up here quickly. Let me stop this one. And let me put up the whiteboard. And let's draw something up here. Alright. I need to make a new one, don't I? So let's stop sharing it again. And let's say whiteboard, new whiteboard. And let's draw this continuum here. Alright. Alright. At the bottom, we're going to have leadership style. Okay, and up here, on this one, we're going to have okay. Now, tell me where you would manage and where you would lead on this one. Alright, so if we did that one there, so on this side, team maturity is high up the top here. And where would leadership be? Would it be closer to the... would leadership be around this part here? Or would it be over here? If the team maturity is high, where would leadership be most effective? Lance on the left. No, I think Lance, I'm not sure that I would agree with that one. In fact, I'm going to show you next week a thing where it would actually, your leadership style starts from autocratic, which would be on the left hand side, and then it would become more democratic. As you get to the middle, it'll be more participative if you get to the end. And if you're becoming participative, then what you're actually doing is you're actually saying, so if it's on this side here and you're participative, so if we're taking participative here, this is where we would get it. So if you've got a highly mature team, then you can actually have a participative management style or a leadership style. So leadership tends to go towards a mature team. So we're saying leadership is up here, Carlos. So leadership would be somewhere over here. So what we're actually saying is that management and leadership are two different things, aren't they? Let's think about this. I started at the beginning and I said that if you want to manage processes, filling a bathtub would be a process. So what you need to do is when you're managing a process, you're actually controlling it. And managing has the idea of containing things within a set standard and within set ways of doing things. Now, if you have an immature team and a team that doesn't respond well or doesn't communicate well, then an autocratic style is something that you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to make sure that the rules are adhered to. In other words, you're going to have to draw up regulations and rules, and you're going to have to ensure that those regulations and rules actually work. Now, the problem is that in a functional organization, you don't have that kind of authority. So what's very important in functional organizations, remember most of you in functional organizations, is to choose a very mature team, a team that you can have a participative type of leadership. And your team has to come from senior management. Okay, it has to come from senior management and senior professionals. In other words, professionals, subject matter experts that actually understand